Welcome back, Stoveminders. Back to baseball. Yes, spring camp has begun for all major league teams, and we are just a week away from the very first spring training games. And to kick off this brand new baseball season, the Houston Astros, who've been the talk of the winter with their swindling and fraudulence, decided to hold their first press conference to give themselves a chance to finally face the media. Because amidst all these allegations and investigations, the Astros themselves, that is the current members of the Astros, apart from pretty much the owner, Jim Crane, have been pretty quiet in regards to everything. They've kind of let the comments and the speculation float around without, actually going and facing questions or, crucially, apologizing. So what the owner, Crane, who is a recurring character in this opening segment, what he decided to do was to organize this little press conference, and it was an absolute joke. It was the worst and also the funniest joke that I have seen in many days. I'm sure if you're a baseball fan, you've seen this, but I love the setup. It's like outside in the beautiful Florida air. You've got this folding table set up for Crane, along with incoming manager Dusty Baker, who I understand why he's there. He's the manager, but he had nothing to do with any of this. So the fact that Dusty was sitting there watching all this go down was... I felt really bad for him. I really did. And then you also had two players, Alex Bregman and Jose Altuve, who are considered, the biggest faces on this team, at least on a part of the batters, who were the guys actually benefiting from this cheating system. They were there sitting on the side in their little folding chairs, and they took turns to come up and offer an apology or a couple apologies. I've heard some people say that it was disingenuous, especially Altuve's apology wasn't exactly genuine. And on that count, I just don't feel as strongly about this. And here's why. First of all, and I've said this before, sign stealing is a part of the game. It's a part of baseball. What the Astros did was above and beyond. The system they implemented was... crossing some imaginary line for sure. But if you take the perspective of the players, they're doing something that's just an evolved, more extreme version of a common practice, and it's something that they're doing to help themselves win. They're winning games. They won a championship with this system. So I don't think there's a whole lot of remorse. I'm sure there's embarrassment. I'm sure they don't like the fact that their reputations were ruined, but I don't think a single guy in that clubhouse feels bad about the fact that they went through with this for the whole year and won a championship title, doing it. And also you have to consider the fact that when you're in a team environment and when you have coaches and senior players, like Carlos Beltran, who was a player at the time, who are putting forward this system that you understand is cheating. But when you have higher-ups in the clubhouse running this operation, you're going to go along with it. Because what's more important in a team environment than solidarity? Not to mention the whole mob mentality phenomenon. And this is just human psychology. When you're in a group... and the group at large is doing something that maybe you as an individual would not find acceptable, when you're in that group environment, you're going to go along with it. And so that's basically a long-winded explanation of why I don't care so much about the players groveling and kowtowing and saying, oh, I'm so sorry. Whatever. The time for sorry was 3 years ago when you were actually taking part in this cheating. What I'm actually pretty mad about is the owner. Jim Crane, the guile of this guy, the gall, the audacity of this dude. He was sitting up there, and allow me to read some of these statements. First of all, he says he doesn't think he should have been held accountable for what happened. whereas reports have stated that Crane was aware of what was going on. If you're the owner and you know what's going on, that's accountability. Because end of the day, you're the guy who hires people in the front office, and you definitely have some sway over what goes down all the way down to the clubhouse level. And what really got me going is he said, quote, "It didn't impact the game." It didn't impact the game. They knew what pitches were coming, and it didn't impact the game. And I believe it was Jeff Passan of ESPN, who was one of many baseball writers who were in attendance. He questioned him on that, and you said, how can you say it didn't impact the game when it obviously impacted the game? And then Crane said, "Oh, I didn't say that. I didn't say it impacted the game." When in fact he said it like 15 seconds earlier. I mean, god damn it. What an asshole. And a little later on in that same press conference, Crane said what they did was not cheating. And I think at this stage it was Marley Rivera asked, if it's not cheating, why are you apologizing? Why did you organize a press conference? And he said, because we broke the rules. And then he was further asked, like, well, if you broke the rules, isn't that cheating? And then he said, you could call it what you want or some shit. Like, oh my goodness, throughout this whole scandal, I think I've been one of the least angry people. After seeing that and hearing this guy's comments, I was a little bit upset. I was a wee bit livid. And what really sucks about all this is not just that the players are going to escape punishment, whether it's suspensions or fines, because of the agreement the league has with the union, where if the league wants to hand down some sort of punishment on the players, it has to be done on a case-by-case basis. And I don't know how much information they were getting. Chances are they were not getting a crystal clear picture of exactly who was doing what, how, and when. And so it would be very hard for the league to go in there and start leveling fines and suspensions on these players for stealing signs, or no, not even directly, manning the system. Like, it wasn't Jose Altuve out there in center field with the camera. He was just receiving the information. And when you're talking about that, things get really murky, right? However, the owner has gotten zero punishment in all this. Zero. The organization was fined $5 million. And this is a $1 billion franchise. That's nothing. That's literally nothing. That's like fining me a nickel. Like, that's negligible. Oh my lord. So, like, I'm done with this. I don't want to talk about the Astros anymore. I don't want to talk about the details and the back and forth that's going on between other players in the league. Only thing I'm looking forward to in regards to following up this whole scandal is, I don't think the league has given Alex Cora an exact punishment. I'm curious to see if they're going to ban him from the game, because he seems to be a key character in this. But I'm really looking forward to is the repercussions the Astros team is going to face, the repercussions the batters are going to deal with when they actually step on the field. And I'm not just talking about the boos and the jeering and the chirping and the blatant disrespect that they're going to face from not just their peers, but especially the fans. And I am looking forward to that a little bit, because, as I said, these players have received zero actual punishment. What I'm looking forward to is the physical punishment. The HBPs, the beanballs, the hit by pitches. Yes, sir. Already the speculation is coming out, like, are the Astros going to lead the majors as a team in hit by pitches? And are any of these individual players going to either lead the league, lead the majors, or potentially set some records? Now, record-wise, when you're going up against baseball history, you're going to go up against the 19th century, and everything is going to kind of crumble pretty easily. So the single-season record for hit by pitches by a team is 148. 148. That's almost every single game somebody gets beaned. And that was in 1898 by the Baltimore Orioles, who, oddly enough, were in the National League at the time. So, I don't think the Astros are going to break that, but something that's, the American League record was set pretty recently in 2008 by the Cleveland Indians when the tribe as a whole got plunked 103 times, 103. That, I think, is totally possible, even though it is obviously a massive, massive amount. Now, you can assume that maybe other teams in the league are kind of get their 2 cents in, throw a few times at him, and just be done with it. Because there's been some reactions in the league that have been a little more like, yeah, what they did was bad, but I mean, other teams steal signs too. And so maybe it's not going to be about that season-long record. It's going to be about potentially a single game record. Well, the most times one team has been or taken hit by pitches in a single game is 6. 6 by either the New York Yankees in 1913 or the Louisville Colonels in 1897. Oh yes, the old Louisville Colonels. 6 times in a game as a team, not just one guy as a team. So I think that's possible. I feel like that is much more likely to get broken than a single season record. And then by inning, the record is 4, which was the Boston Braves in 1893. Or 3, which is the American League record, and there are 7 different times when that's happened, as recently as 1988, twice that year actually. The California Angels and a couple months later, the Oakland Athletics both took 3 hit by pitches in a single inning against opposing teams. And yeah, that's also could happen, but what you gotta understand is like there's revenge, there's making a statement, but then there's also the game. And a hit by pitch is a free base runner. So, yeah, you plunk 3 guys in one inning, that's bases loaded. I don't know who's going to want to make that kind of sacrifice. But what about individuals? Well, for Jose Altuve, the most times he's been beamed in 1 year is 9. And for Bregman, his career high in hit by pitches is 12. However, the all-time record for single-season hit by pitches is held by, not surprisingly, the same guy who has the career record for hit by pitches. A fellow by the name of Huey Jennings, who in 1896 was hit by a pitch 51 times. Brutal. And in his career, his 18-year career, 287 times was he hit by a pitch. Oh man, you know what? I feel like the dead ball era is underrated. Like we're living in the juice ball era right now, and I look back in like the 1890s, early 1900s. Man, like first of all, the stat lines are hilarious, but like it was a simpler time, For Huey Jennings that year in 1896, when he was plunked 51 times, he played in 130 games. He hit 0 home runs. None. RBIs, 121. He hit 401. Yeah, 4 over 400. He had a 472 on base percentage. He stole 70 bases. 70 bases. And he took 19 walks to go with 11 strikeouts. Man, it was, as I said, just a simpler time. Now, as for more modern marks that we can compare to, the only other player to ever have been plunked 50 times in a season was Ron Hunt, then of the Montreal Expos in 1971 when he took 50 HBPs. But for the more recent history, you're going to be looking at Brandon Guyer and his mark that he set in 2016 when he was hit by a pitch 31 times. So 50 is definitely out of the ordinary, but might a guy like Altuve or Bregman get plunked 30 times? Well, it would be notable. Even over 20, you're starting to push for leading the league or leading the majors in HBPs. Last year, that was your boy Anthony Rizzo, 27 times. And that makes sense because Rizzo's a big target who's crowding the plate. I'm sure a lot of those, if not all of them, were inadvertent. But for a guy like Altuve or Bregman, who, as I mentioned, don't get hit very much as is, for them to even double their career high to get into that 20 range would be exceptional, and it would be because of bad blood coming from the mound. So a lot to be seen, whether or not any records get broken or just how many times. the Astros as a whole or single individual players get plunked. But that's what I'd be looking for. If you're wondering about matchups where there might be a particularly great amount of animosity, well, the Dodgers have been perhaps the angriest about this situation because they lost the 2017 World Series when the Astros were cheating. And let's not forget, the Dodgers are extremely desperate for a championship. Well, unfortunately, the interleague schedule does not align this year, so the Astros are not scheduled to play the Dodgers in the regular season. However, they do play 7 games against the New York Yankees, who have been a bit bitter about losing to the Astros in that ALCS in 2017. They're going to face each other in Houston in May, the 15th to the 17th, and then the Astros are going to the Bronx in September for their penultimate series of the regular season, September 21st to 24th. That one I'll be watching because, not just because it's late in the season and there's, potentially a postseason preview going on, but those Yankees fans, oh yeah, they'll have something to say. And the Cleveland Indians, well, in particular Mike Clevenger, has been really pissed off about this whole situation. Well, it remains to be seen if he will face the Astros when the Astros travel to Cleveland in June, or at the end of June, early July, the June 29th to July 2nd. The Astros playing Cleveland. It's all for the future. We'll see. But you know what? Let's get to the stove at hand, because yes, spring training has begun, but there are still contracts and such being dealt out. Deals of note, players who I think could have an impact. The biggest deal signed this past week was courtesy of the Boston Red Sox, who now with a much lower payroll with Betts and Prescott are going crazy. They gave $4.25 million on a 1-year deal to Kevin Pillar. Now, I live in Canada, and there was a point in the not-so-distant past when Kevin Pillar was somehow the best player on the Blue Jays, and he was in, advertisements, and he makes a lot of highlight reel catches, so he was being, his name was being tossed around a lot. But what's actually the deal with this guy? Well, one thing that stands out about Pillar is he's remarkably consistent. You know what you're going to get. He's going to hit somewhere between 250 and 270, which is decent. But his on-base percentage is pretty, it's around 300, so your money bars are going to be a little peeved in that department. He doesn't have exceptional power, though he'll get you some home runs here and there. More to the point, Pillar is a really good base runner. In 4 straight seasons, he has hit 35 or more doubles and stolen 14 or more bases. So that's nice to have. And it all goes along with what's a very good glove. Highlight reels aside, Pillar has 60 defensive runs saved in all outfield positions across 7 seasons, although he has slipped a little bit over the last 2 years. But all in all, Pillar represents a quality depth piece to the Red Sox, whether it's a guy coming off the bench to pinch hit, or just giving one of their regular outfielders a day off, because with Bradley, Benintendi, and Verdugo, their starters are pretty set, or just a defensive replacement. Definitely not a bad guy to have on the roster, and especially with Alex Verdugo now slated to miss opening day, or at least potentially miss opening day with a little bit of back issues, so we might see Kevin Pillar out in right field or center field, or who knows, on the first day of the season. Moving on to Seattle, where the Mariners have brokered a reunion with Taijuan Walker on a 1-year deal worth $2 million with an additional $1 million in incentives. Now, the Mariners drafted the right-handed starter in the first round in 2010, and Walker played the first 4 seasons of his career in Seattle. But then he was traded to the Diamondbacks, where he has spent the last 3 years. But the most recent 2 seasons have been very limited due to various injuries. Walker has thrown just 14 innings over the last 2 years, including just 1 inning in 2019. Kind of concerning, but let's just say he's going to be healthy. Let's hope for the best. What kind of guy are you going to get? Well, Walker only has 3 full seasons under his belt between 2015 and 17. And in that span, he had a 4.10 ERA, 4.33 FIP, a 1.253 WHIP, and a 1.02 ERA+. So about an average to maybe slightly above average pitcher, kind of a mid-rotation guy. And for the Mariners, that could be your number 2 starter, because besides Marco Gonzalez, there's not really much to write home about with this Mariners pitching staff. I mean, there's a reason these guys gave Wei Chen a minor league deal, at least a shot. I don't know if you say Kikuchi's going to finally break out after coming over from Japan. And Walker, he's only 27 years old. There's definitely the potential to return to health and kind of return to being a fine mid-rotation piece. But yeah, considering the Mariners' needs, not a terrible addition. An even bigger need is their outfield, which is drastically thin, and in particular with Mitch Haniger slated to miss a good amount of time. Now, Haniger, granted, was not very good last season, but the year before that, he was basically their best hitter. Haniger, in the past past 3 weeks, really, has had core surgery, and now, in just the last few days, a discectomy, which is a vertebrate operation. Not very good. Well, after his core surgery, Haniger was slated to miss 6 to 8 weeks. Going from late January, that's about, might miss the start of the season, or definitely miss most of camp, but now with this vertebrate operation he had, who knows when he's going to come back. I looked at their outfield depth chart, and Malik Smith is the only guy of any note. That's bad for the Mariners, particularly with top prospect Jarred Kelenic still working down in the minors. So, the Mariners decided to give a minor league deal to Carlos Gonzalez. Let's see how this works out, because Gonzalez had a career worst 2019. 145 at-bats, small sample, but he hit just 200 with a 572 OPS. Not very good. Cargo, who is now 34 years old, is a left-handed bat who hasn't had an above-average season ballpark adjustment since 2016. Most of his career has been with the Rockies, and while he's put up some good stats, he's kind of a Coors baby. As I said, last 3 seasons have all been below-average OPS plus, which adjusts for ballpark. Because of his very small and terrible 2019, I decided to combine his 2017 and 18 stats when he was a full-timer in Colorado. And cumulatively, he had 269 with a 779 OPS, which is good, but a 92 OPS plus. So some big questions around whether or not Gonzalez can get it done outside of a very hitter-friendly environment. He's not a good defender, so it's potentially, there's a reason he's on a minor league deal. He's not bona fide, gonna add good stuff. However, because of the state of the Mariners infield, I think this is a good add as well. Well, I mentioned Haniger is going to miss some time. An even higher profile player slated to miss the start of the season is Cleveland Indians right-handed starting pitcher Mike Clevinger, who recently underwent knee surgery. He's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, so we'll see him back sometime in April. But depending on the pace of his recovery and the fact that with pitchers especially, you're going to need a long rehab assignment when you miss all of spring training, we might not see Clevy back until May. And that's pretty bad for the Indians. Might struggle right out of the gate. Clevinger is one of only 2 remaining pitchers on what's been an absolutely gutted Indians staff. Yeah, no more Kluber, no more Bauer, no more Salazar. They got Bieber and Clevinger left, and now they're not going to have Clevinger for at least the first month. So, Cleveland Indians are a team to watch, not so much whether or not they can make some noise, though that's obviously always a potential. Still some talent on that squad. But if they can't really pull it together in those opening months, is this team finally going to sell? Are they finally going to go for the full rebuild? Sticking around in the AL Comedy Central, the Detroit Tigers brokered another reunion, this time with outfielder Cameron Maddon on a 1-year contract, $1.5 million guaranteed, with the potential to double that salary on incentives. Now, an odyssey between the Mabbins and the Tigers. Okay, so Detroit drafted Maddon 10th overall in 2005 and proceeded to trade him after 1 season in the big leagues to the Marlins as part of the Miguel Cabrera trade. Now, Maddon never flowered into the top prospect he was supposed to be. His career numbers point to about a 250 hitter with a 700 OPS and a career 93 OPS plus in 13 seasons. Now, Maddon is about to enter his 3rd stint with the Tigers. Yes, 3rd stint. He came back to Detroit on a 1-year deal in 2016, and he ended up having a career year. In 94 games, he hit .315 with an 800 OPS. Very, very good. As a matter of fact, Maddon did not have that good of a season again until just last year with the Yankees. In 82 games, he hit .285 with an 858 OPS. So, a little bit of reason to be somewhat optimistic, but this is also a guy who's been a journeyman outfielder, who's been a fairly average hitter, who's had some bad years, some good years. Still has good speed on the bases. He'll get you doubles, he'll steal some bases. He will be 33 years old, so I'm not sure how long that will last. He's kind of an average defender. However, all these things considered, the Tigers have a fairly thin outfield themselves. In fact, I checked the depth chart on MLB.com, and already Maddon is the Tigers' top right fielder. So, whichever way you look at it, they're adding a regular time player. It'll be interesting to see if Maddon can, fulfill some long ago destiny of breaking out this late in his career. But as I said, his best season was with the Tigers, so we'll see how this goes. Speaking of veterans, a couple, or I guess 1.5 retirements went down this past week. One of them is to Jeremy Hellickson. Oh yes. The 2011 AL Rookie of the Year did not exactly follow through into a very good career. Hellickson, who played in 10 seasons and is retiring at the age of just 32 years old, was kind of a number 4 starter for most of his career. I'm sure some Rays fans will have good memories of Hellickson, but I mentioned it because there's nothing else to talk about. And the half retirement that I alluded to, because it's not official, but reports state that Ben Zobrist is probably not going to play in 2020. And that would make sense. Benzo will turn 39 years old this summer. And he's coming off a really tough year that included everything from a divorce to missing most of the season and then coming back and not really doing very well for the Cubs. His contract ran out, free agency, and yeah, there hasn't been much chatter about him talking to other teams. I don't know how much he wants to play anymore, if he just wants to chill with his kids. If he does retire, it will be a bookend to an interesting career. Zobrist is the super utility man. He owned up the utility man position better than anybody else. Across 14 seasons, he was a 3-time All-Star, a 2-time World Series champion. He had a career .266 batting average with a .357 career on base, .426 slugging, and a .113 OPS plus. So never exactly elite, but consistently a valuable player, a good performer. Years after year, he was hitting in that 270 to 280 range. You know what you're going to get. He was versatile. He was a good clubhouse guy. I'm a big fan of Zobrist, not just for what he did with the Cubs, but because, again, everybody loves a utility man who's actually good. His goofy batting stance, his support for electronic umpires, it's all there. It's all there. We'll miss you, Benzo. Maybe he'll come back. We don't know. But as a former Cub, Zobrist has given me an easy transition into Cubscast. What's going on with the Cubs? Well, the main thing that happened was the Cubs gave a minor league deal, another one, to second baseman Jason Kipnis. This could be interesting. Now, Kipnis is not the same guy the Cubs faced in the 2016 World Series. He has declined considerably since then. In the 3 years after losing the World Series to the Cubs, Kipnis has been a .236 hitter, .305 on base, .403 slugging, and 87 OPS plus. He's never been a good fielder. He was a good bat. He's not anymore. Yeah, I'm not super excited about this. Logically speaking, I think the Cubs pulled this move just to put some pressure on their second base position battle, where the front runners are some youngins, Nico Hoerner and David Bote. And I like these guys, especially Hoerner. I wouldn't really want Kipnis, considering how poorly he's hit the last 3 years, to take away anything from these guys. But who knows? Maybe he goes in the spring and he's just absolutely balling out. That's the purpose of a minor league deal. You never know. In terms of trade chatter, the Chris Bryant is apparently still on the block, but other teams are not biting. Washington Nationals GM Mike Rizzo, no relation to Anthony Rizzo, or no known relation to Anthony Rizzo, said no to that. He said the Nationals are not looking to make a trade right now. And other reports are saying that most of the Bryant's chatter is apparently the Cubs themselves creating media wins. And let me tell you about that, because the Cubs have been on the receiving end of that bullshit. So yeah, you're all welcome. Anyway, so probably Bryant's going to stay with the Cubs going into the season. Not mad about it. My position with a potential Bryant trade was always, you better get a fucking package for this guy. Anyway, the other Rizzo, Anthony, came out with some comments of his own. And ever a measured and professional public speaker, Anthony Rizzo said that teams in the league are treating the luxury tax like a salary cap and refusing to go over it. And that's a good observation. I agree with him. And in particular, that applies to the Cubs, because fucking Ricketts, a.k.a. Bizarro Ted Cruz, has refused to open up the checkbooks, despite the fact this is one of the richest franchises in all of the major leagues. He's refused to spend money over the cap, and it's pretty frustrating. We see how the Red Sox have dealt with the cap too. They've been very iffy about it. Yeah, not much more to say. It's just an observation. I think it's true. It's one of those matters that has a big effect on the game, but it's such a front office ownership matter that I don't even think it's going to emerge in potential CBA negotiations. And finally, former Cubs manager Joe Maddon had some words about leaving Chicago. Basically, the divorce was mutual, which I guess is nice to hear. Apparently, after his first few seasons at the helm, and especially after a disappointing end to the 2018 season, where the Cubs, after getting rained out in all of April, had to play like 40 games in 40 days, a Noah's Ark situation at the end of the season, didn't perform too well because of that, or maybe because of themselves. I think you can layer the blame both ways. And of course, they lost the division lead, lost the one-game playoff for the division, lost the wild card, and going into 2019, Theo Epstein and company adopted a more hands-on approach with how the team is managed. And Maddon was not too happy about that. So I think the Angels' ownership will suit his needs. They were very hands-off, it seemed, keeping Mike Scioscia along for much longer than he needed to be. So I think Maddon will be satisfied. And he gets to live in California. He'll enjoy himself. Not too bad. But it makes me wonder how hands-on the front office is going to be with David Ross coming in. Or if they're going to adopt a fully clean slate approach and just let Rossi do his thing. But that seems a little unlikely considering how inexperienced as a manager Ross is, which is one reason why they have surrounded him with people with more experience, like the bench coach is the former Padres manager, bringing in Mike Napoli as the quality assurance coach, not just a former player and teammate of Ross, but a guy who's been in clubhouses as a coach for the past few seasons. So it seems to me like Ross is more open to outside interference, whereas Maddon, this great baseball mind, a little arrogant in that mind, I think, but with great intelligence comes great arrogance. Old school, a bit of an old school dude as far as like, just let me do my thing. So it'll be totally a different regime in that matters. But yeah, that's actually one last thing I wanted to mention is apparently Alex Rodriguez is interested in buying the New York Mets. This would be so ridiculous, but also kind of great. It's kind of cool how you have these players like A-Rod and Jeter, former teammates who earned a great deal of money in their playing careers. A-Rod through his record-setting contracts, Jeter as much through his many endorsements, and then going around and investing that money back into the game and taking over teams. Now, Jeter's ownership of the Marlins has not been very positive, in my opinion. But it'd be pretty cool if A-Rod would then own a team in the same division. Yeah, I don't know if they still talk or what, but like that'd be interesting. Any Mets-Marlins series would have that sort of context. A-Rod is someone who's really into the game. I'm not sure if he would how he would deal with Brody Van Wagenen, who's a bit of an outspoken dude himself. But that'd be cool. Yeah, as I mentioned last week, the Mets are for sale, but a potential buyer was close and then it collapsed. Maybe it's A-Rod. Well, that about wraps it up for this Stoveminders Cubscast. You, my fellow Stoveminders, I do still urge you to follow that stove. Keep an eye on it because, where the fuck is Yasiel Puig gonna go? Well, as of a week ago, that was the last time MLB Trade Rumors published one of their latest on Yasiel Puig articles. Talks between Puig and the Giants are all but dead. There was some mutual interest between him and the Rays. That would be interesting, but how many fucking outfielders do the Rays have? Stop signing outfielders, please. What else is going on? That's about it. That's all that was mentioned. I remember earlier in the winter, there was some talk about the Marlins looking at Puig. That'd be kind of cool, but that hasn't gotten a ton of traction since then. Puig's a good player. I know he's volatile, but the guy can play. So it would suck if it's like mid-March and this guy's still without a contract. But we shall see. We shall see. And for that and other reasons, like where the fuck is Matt Harvey gonna go? Stoveminders, keep it stovey. Keep it warm, because the stove is cold.